If you are ready for that first warbird, the tail dragger warbird, and so you want a plane that can handle well on the ground. You want one that flies, fantastic, easy to fly. And then also, of course, it's got to land well, have good ground handling. This FMS Zero is a keeper. Let's check it out. Welcome to the shop. Got the FMS Zero 1.4 meter 4S 6-channel retracts, flaps, the whole shooting match. This is that next step up. A lot of times people are getting those 1.2s, a lot of great planes. The 1.4 doesn't seem like 200 millimeters is bigger, but it is. So look, I'm going to go into this, some details about this plane. It's a good looking plane. It's an older model, but I'll tell you, it flies as good as it looks. It really does. It is a really enjoyable plane to fly. I'm going to go into all the parts, take a look at that, kind of tell you what I think. We're going to do the assembly and the setup. There's some details there that I think are important because there were a lot of complaints about this plane, and there's something that I just do differently to clean up the battery area. We're going to fly the heck out of it. I'm going to do several landings just to show you how this thing lands. Now I'm flying it in pretty heavy winds, so I'm coming a little hotter. I think this plane will slow down pretty nice. Then I'm going to give the summary. If you like these kind of videos, hit that like button. If you have a question, leave a comment. Obviously, links in the description below for all kinds of stuff. Stick around. Let's take a quick look at the parts. This plane has been out a while, meaning they haven't made a lot of updates like they have on a lot of their other planes. Foam hinges. You will have to install all the control horns. The details are good though. I mean, everything about the plane as far as the panel lines, the paint, lighting, things like that, I found very, very good. It's just some of the other areas weren't as up to date. Tail section, same thing, foam hinges, you'll have to install the control horns, and it is a glue together assembly. So you will be applying your favorite adhesive to the tail section to glue it onto the fuse. Checking out the fuselage, you'll see that it is good looking paint, stickers. It is that classic, Zero look. When we dig into the battery compartment, you'll find that, it's a bit of a mess. There's a lot of loose stuff flopping around, including the ESC, which I'll get into later. And it'll require a little bit of servo cable management, and I've got a trick on how to do that I'll show here in a minute. But all in all, plenty capable. The battery, there's only one spot for it. It's right there. It's over the ESC all the way forward. So it's going to be pretty particular on the type of battery you use. Detailed 3-blade prop goes together like a lot of them with screws, and the nuts with lock washers. There's a lot of little foam bits that need to get glued on. Ton of little parts, like I said. You've got control horns that need to get installed, and they will have some separate screws. You'll have the long screws for the wings, more control horns, and a couple little plastic hard points for screwing on the wing to the fuselage. As I said before, you've got a pile of Y connectors. Well, instead of using that big pile of Y connectors, I use something else. This right here, link in the description below. A lot of cool detail. We're going to get into more of that during the assembly right now. This assembles very easily. If you've built a few planes or assembled a few planes, you kind of feel your way around. However, the documentation is pretty helpful. First thing are the control horns. And the control horns use 2 separate self-tapping screws, a long one and a short one. The long one will typically go in the thick part of the control surface, and the smaller, shorter screw will go into the other part. You'll figure it out. It's pretty easy. But there's only 2 screws. I dry fit all of these pieces here in the tail section. I like to prep the surface before I glue them together, and that means scraping it up a little bit with some sandpaper, cleaning it up with a little alcohol, and then applying a light coat of, in this case, foam tack on both sides of the foam. Seems to work very well for me, and obviously you saw I'm using a brush to spread it around to get, like I said, a nice even coat. I don't want it oozing all over the place. They slide together super simple. I did remove the rudder control rod. It just made it a lot easier to put that assembly together. As I mentioned before also, there are there's a few little foam bits that need to get glued on. There are control rods and control horns for the ailerons and the flaps. Those need to get installed. I would install those before you start assembling the wings. Wing assembly, super simple. Just carbon fiber rods, slide the two halves together, make sure the cables are okay. You got these little hard points. One goes in the front, one goes in the back, and then slap it on, slap it on the fuselage to screw it in. The battery compartment's a bit of a mess. First thing I did was I wanted to get that ESC all the way forward. So took the cowl off and pulled the wires through, which allowed that ESC to sit down where it properly belongs. Now we got all these cables everywhere, and those are the cables that came out of the wing. So I got this little splitter, which removes the need for all these Y connectors, cleans it up. It did require a little foam removal, which I just made a big enough slot for that new connector to fit into. Plugged everything in, zip tied it clean. The only wires that are coming through are 3 wires that plug into the receiver, and looks nice and tidy. I didn't find any information on the control throws in the documentation, so I went with what I would normally put in there, and I'll share that with you here in the end. Both the tail wheel and the main tires are a little hard plastic. Not great, but they're doable. I do like the landing gear doors. They look sharp and functional. The canopy is held on with foam in the front and kind of a locking mechanism in the back. Pulling on the antenna that I glued in with foam tack seems to be a good handle for it. The battery compartment, as I said, it was pretty small. 4S 2200 fits in there fine, and then the canopy locks the battery in place. All in all, this is a really sharp looking model for as old as it is. My setup page is coming up next. If you like the tips and tricks that I'm showing in these videos and you're not subscribed, please do. You know, it helps out the channel quite a bit. Thanks a lot. Let me know if you have any questions about the setup. Well, let's go to the field and fly. All right, let's show off what this thing can do in the air. I'm flying with a 4S 2200 shoved in that battery compartment, and when you put the canopy on, it kind of locks it in place, as I mentioned. I have a Spectrum AR631, and I have AS3X on. It is windy day while I'm flying here. This plane is, as you would expect with a warbird, highly maneuverable. There's some tricks up its sleeve, which I'm pleasantly surprised with as well, but the aerobatic capabilities, it'll do all of it. Plenty of power, plenty of speed. I think I was giving my cameraman, Matt, a pretty tough time to try to track it as I'm zipping all over the place.
Boy, it sure turns on a dime, man. It is easy to yank around.
It's a pretty zippy plane, but it doesn't make a lot of noise. I mean, the prop has a full throttle pass right here. Sounds good, but it's not overly loud like some of them are.
Do a few approaches.
No doubt it's a great flying plane. One thing I like to show is the stall test. This is one of those planes that I'm just always amazed at. Full up elevator, and it just doesn't drop a wing. Right here, I actually let off and turned. The other thing is I just jammed on that elevator and hoping that it would maybe accelerated stall. Nope. Pretty darn solid plane. Slow flyer. I always like to show a bunch of landings. I think it's important for someone who's interested in this plane to see how this plane lands, and well, they're not all perfect. To my defense, it is a little windy. Regardless, I found that this plane, and I am coming at a little more speed because there is quite a bit of wind. I only have about a half flap. There's a couple landings I do slow down quite a bit. Bottom line for me is this plane was pretty easy to land. Ground handling was very good. So it's not one of those planes you're going to scrape it up very, very frequently. It's a solid plane for landing. Let's head back into the shop and summarize. Welcome back. As you saw, this is just a really fine flying airplane. Looks great, flies really well. As I talked about, the parts, it is an older plane. The panel lines are a little aggressive, but it's a good looking plane in the air. It really does, for being as old as it is, they did a really fantastic job. Lots of nice little details. Foam hinges, you got to put the control arms or control horns on. Some of that stuff is just, you're not used to it, but it's simple. If you haven't done it before, it's pretty easy. Most of you who are buying a plane like this have done that before, so it's really not a problem. As far as the cleaning up the battery bay, a lot of folks complained about the battery bay being a mess. With that splitter I got from FMS, it made it super tidy, as you saw. Setup, simple. Manual doesn't have a lot of information. I included my setup guide, not my setup guide, but my setup page that gives you everything you need to set up this plane yourself. But more importantly is the flight performance. How does the plane fly? And as you saw, I mean, it flies like a fantastic warbird. And the Zeros are notorious for just being great flying airplanes. And this is just like all of them. It just flew fantastic. Ton of power, ton of aerobatic capabilities. The throws I had in there were perfect for me and the way I like to fly. If you want to hover this or do 3D with it, I can't help you there. But for me, it is a really super stable plane that doesn't bite you. A lot of these planes, you fly too slow and they'll drop a wing and you're done. This plane, as far as the stability and non-stalling, was exceptional. I thought the landings and ground control, the example of my landings, I was coming in a little hot. I think if the wind wasn't bouncing all over the place, I would have slowed down a little, and add a little more flap. But the landings, on the ground, it handles well. I would get different tires. These are hard plastic tires on the back as well. Get some rubber tires and it'll grip a lot better and have much better ground handling. But for the most part, fantastic plane. If you're interested in this plane, there's a link in the description below, along with a discount code to get a couple bucks off this plane. If you have any questions, leave a comment, please. Love to hear from you. Questions or what you think about this plane. Appreciate it. Have a great day.